welcome to episode 28 of Can We Still Be Friends, the podcast that tests the limits of the friendship between two people who mistake movie taste for personal morality. I'm Nate Goss, here with Ryan Ebling. This summer, Disney Pixar released their most recent movie, Inside Out. Like many Pixar movies, it's getting excellent reviews and has most adults leaving the theater in tears. While Ryan and I are generally huge Pixar fans, there is one movie we do disagree on. So for this episode, we're rewatching Brad Bird's The Incredibles from 2004.
The Incredibles made a whopping $261 million at the box office, and it won 2 Oscars, including Best Animated Film. It's got a 97% fresh rating on Rotten Tomatoes and is often ranked by critics as being among Pixar's best films. Personally, in the past, I've called this my favorite Pixar movie, while Nate feels it isn't one of Pixar's better efforts.
So on rewatching, does The Incredibles succeed in its return to action?
Or is its old superhero costume a little too tight to be socially acceptable? Keep listening.
Dissected a frog.
Dash got sent to the office again.
Good.
No, Bob, that's bad.
What?
Dash got sent to the office again.
What? What for?
He
Nothing.
put a tack on the teacher's chair during class.
Nobody saw me. You could barely see it on the tape.
They caught you on tape and you still got away with it? Whoa. You must have been booking. How fast do you think you were
Bob,
going?
we are not encouraging this.
I'm not encouraging. I'm just asking how fast you
Honey!
Great. First the car, now I gotta pay to fix the tape.
The car. What happened to the car?
Here, I'm getting a new
So that's a scene from the movie we're discussing in this episode, The Incredibles. Obviously, Bob, also known as Mr. Incredible, is feeling a little fed up with the normal life, and the only excitement is when he hears his son used his superpowers in school.
A little domestic drama.
Yeah, not what you usually see in a family film or a superhero film. You usually don't see the home life, the mundanity outside of the superpowers. But that's the movie we're discussing in this episode.
Yeah, we're discussing The Incredibles because actually we were talking off mic a little bit that we had actually both seen Inside Out, the most recent Pixar movie. You know, a lot of people are talking about it. A lot of people are loving this movie.
I really enjoyed it.
You can count me amongst those people.
Also, you can count both of us amongst the criers.
Oh, boy.
It's a very emotionally powerful movie. I feel like this Inside Out is almost a built-in babysitter for a night out for the parents, because it's a movie that's going to have colors and excitement for kids, but I don't know a kid who's going to understand what's happening psychologically that
Sure.
this movie is saying.
Yes.
The kids are going to come out saying like, Boing Boing was funny, and the parents are going to be drying their eyes saying like, yeah, Boing Boing was real funny.
Yeah, right. He was real funny, and
Funny, and now he's gone forever.
Need to read up a little more Freud, or there was also a
Yeah.
lot of just even psychological stuff going on that was over my head.
Yeah,
that I almost needed
know.
to.
I
But
know.
we're not talking about Inside Out today. But it was a great movie,
It was
and I
great.
think it really sort of made us just think about how we wanted to have this discussion about Pixar, and specifically about this movie, which seems to be a movie that comes up again and again between the two of us, because while we both love most
lot of
everything that
Pixar.
Pixar comes out with, this is the one that we just tend to have a few disagreements, maybe not so much on the quality of it, but maybe where it fits within the
that's
Pixar
probably
camp.
the bigger.
you know.
This is kind of squabbling at this point.
It is.
Quibbling a little bit.
Admittedly so, but I'm hoping it'll just bring up a little bit of some good conversation and talking
Yeah.
points about The Incredibles. So,
Yeah, and what makes Pixar good. So why don't you talk about the first time you saw it?
Sure, I can do that. So, I was thinking back on the first time I saw The Incredibles, and strangely, I wouldn't normally think of a Pixar movie as one that I would normally go out and do this for, but I went to the midnight showing of The Incredibles.
Did you really?
Yeah. Like, I
They
remember...
had a midnight showing for a children's movie?
Weird, isn't it?
Yeah.
They had a midnight showing at the theater in our little college town. And I remember my roommate at the time, we were just kind of, I think, looking for something to do. We both really liked Pixar, which
Finding Nemo
had
done
been
the movie
coming off
before
of
this.
Monsters, Inc. and Finding Nemo. And, we were really excited. I was really excited to see what Pixar was going to do next.
Yeah.
And so we went to the midnight showing. And I remember before that seeing the trailer for the movie and already kind of setting myself up for possible disappointment.
Oh.
Only because I kind of saw the trailer and the superhero thing, and I was kind of like, come on. We're going the superhero route. We're jumping on that bandwagon. Like, what's Pixar going to do with the superhero thing? You know, and which I'm not. If you want to go back to our archives and listen to the Avengers, it's not a genre that I despise. It's just not one that ever really connected to me on a very personal level. So I was kind of like, okay, well, Pixar, let's see what you got. And I saw it, and it was not what I was expecting in a lot of different ways, which I'm sure we'll get into as we keep on talking. And I remember I did like it, but I was always waiting for what I would at the time consider sort of that Pixar moment, the moment that just kind of melts you. And it never happened at all. And so I hadn't seen it since then because...
Really? You've only seen it once?
Yeah, because I just never thought to go back to it. It just, even after Pixar that came after, like WALL-E and Up, had those moments again. Yeah. So when I started to assess where The Incredibles fit, it's a good movie. I don't have really anything bad to say about it, but it never really, to me, it was sort of middle of the road Pixar, which in itself is still very good. Yeah. So, but then I guess what always sort of confused me was how many of my friends and people and critics would put this as like the best Pixar that was ever put out. And I never got that. Never got it. Yeah. So that's where I'm coming from. How about you?
You know what? I honestly, the first time I saw The Incredibles, it does not stick out to me as like...
In the theater or no?
I saw it in the theater. Oh yeah, okay. I saw it. I saw it as soon as I could. I don't know if it wasn't midnight showing, but yeah, I try to see every Pixar in the theater. Every Pixar that I think I'll like. I still haven't seen Cars or Cars 2. I still haven't seen Monsters University, but I have a fairly good sense about whether I'll like something or not.
I read you.
I don't think that it's a prejudgment. It's just, I don't think that's going to be my cup of tea. I kind of have myself figured out.
Right.
So I don't make it a priority to go see Cars 2.
Sure.
But I mean, I know I saw it in the theaters. I saw it with friends. Probably at the same theater you saw it at.
Yeah. This is 2004, so we were both in college,
we were both in college, yeah. And I just remember really having a ton of fun with it. I thought it was really funny. I really liked, if you listen to older episodes, I did like superheroes, but I was not as into them as I am currently. Like, I wasn't as well read. So the unique take on the superhero genre wasn't necessarily something that I was appreciating at the time, but I thought Brad Bird just has a way with visuals. Mm-hmm. He knows how to make action sequences exciting. I really like the sense of humor. I really like the relationships. I think I get what you're saying. I've seen it a bunch of times since, just because I really like it. And I think I know what you're talking about with the Pixar moment, and we'll kind of get to that.
Yeah.
But to me, that it did still have an emotional impact. I thought the characters were tremendously well developed, and I thought the family dynamic was very honest and very...
As much as a superhero movie can be, it's a very authentic movie.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And I think that was one thing that I just really appreciated about it. And something that made me put it higher on my list is that it was fair to all its characters. Every character had a motive and a direction and a mind of their own without being overburdened. We didn't have to go into way back into somebody's backstory to understand what they were doing. But Brad Bird and the animation team, which made it so detailed with the hair and the expressions and like everything. I mean, it's just such a visually rich movie. They did a lot of stuff in short term. So that's what that's what I remember being impressed with this movie, was that it was surface level, exciting and funny, but also really deep and well formed.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you, what was your familiarity with Brad Bird before going, like the first time you watched it?
He'd only directed Iron Giant,
which I hadn't seen, so I had like no reference point for The Incredibles. Really, I saw the Iron Giant years later. Actually, it was a long time before I finally saw Iron Giant. It was a great movie.
That's
love that movie.
That may be my. I don't know. If pressed to name it, it may be my favorite animated movie, and it's definitely one of my favorite movies. I just love
Iron Giant.
I love the Iron Giant. Yeah. So I don't know how much of that I was carrying into it though.
Okay. Like you weren't saying Brad Bird, the guy who made my favorite animated movie of all time, is doing this superhero movie.
Yeah.
You weren't necessarily going into it.
I didn't
like
know
that,
a ton
or-
about Brad Bird. I knew I
Okay.
liked Iron Giant. I think my love for Iron Giant has come in rewatching it years and years
Yeah.
since. But yeah, so that's what I remember. I just remember, really enjoying it and not necessarily being caught up in any hype or anything, but
Sure.
I've always liked it. So what's your Letterboxd rating?
Okay. Before the rewatch, I had this at a 3.5. With the sort of reservation of knowing that I hadn't seen it in years.
Yeah.
When I set up my Letterboxd account, and then on this rewatch, I bumped it up to a 4.
Oh.
So 4 out of 5 for me.
Okay.
Yeah. Go ahead for you though. What was your Letterboxd rating?
Mine was 4.5. And I was thinking, for some reason, as I was rewatching it, that I had it as a 5.
Okay.
And I was like, that doesn't seem right. So on the rewatch, I was like, I'm going to change it to 4.5. And then I checked it and I was like, oh, it was 4.5. So I guess I was level headed
Yeah.
when I rated it. But yeah, so 4.5.
I think the Letterboxd thing comes in really handy for some of our discussions where we really do think we're going to differ on the quality of the film.
Yeah.
I don't know that that's going to be the case here.
Right.
I don't know that we're going to really squabble over how
Half
good
a
the
point,
movie
half a
is or
star, yeah.
half a star, but I do think there is a difference between us in how much this movie maybe means to us personally, or maybe where this really fits in with Pixar, So it's hard to know where to even start. I mean,
Well, let's start with what some of our listeners have said. Is that an okay place to start?
That's a good place, yeah.
I think that you had some you had an interesting idea with this one. So why don't you go ahead and talk about what you asked a couple of our listeners?
Sure. So what I always find amazing about Pixar is the amount, and Inside Out was a definite example of this. The amount at which Pixar can create a movie that appeals to both adults and kids, and not in a way that is just, let's throw some jokes in that wink at adults, like what a lot of DreamWorks and stuff does.
Right.
They make movies where the thematic elements of the movie appeal just as much to adults as they do to kids. But, most of the Pixar I've seen as an adult. And an adult without kids. So what I was...
Have you seen any Pixar? Oh, Toy Story.
Toy Story, I was a kid.
Yep.
That's kind of it. Bugs Life, I think I was already in high school when that came out.
Oh, yeah.
And then pretty much Monsters, Inc., I think I was already in college, or at least going into college when that came out. So, yeah, so I've been an adult the whole time. I don't even, up until the last year and a half, I don't even have any sort of reference point of kids in my own life. So what I was curious about is, what is the appeal to kids with Pixar?
Yeah.
And is there a difference? Do kids find different movies of Pixar's more appealing than I do?
Yeah.
That was my sort of main question I wanted to throw out. So I asked 2 of my friends from college who have a good number of kids. One of them has 3 kids, ranging from 2 to 6. The other one has 4 kids of also varying ages. And I just asked them, would you mind asking your kids what their favorite Pixar movie is?
Uh-huh.
Why don't we go ahead and just listen to this response of here's 3 kids of varying ages saying what their favorite Pixar movie is.
Okay, Emmy, which one is your favorite? What is that one?
Up.
You like that better than all the other ones?
Yeah, but I also like Monsters Inc. And Incredibles. And I like.
You like Incredibles over Monsters, Inc.?
And I like these 2.
You like Toy Story or Bugs Life?
I like Bugs Life, Toy Story as much as I like The Incredibles. I like Bugs Life. And I like this.
Okay. Millie, which one do you like the best?
Pick it out, Millie. Cars 2?
Cars 2?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so a little all over the place.
Yeah. Name your favorite movie and they name 5.
And also the same thing sort of happened when I asked Andrew, who pitched for their kids to rank their top 3. This is what our listener Andrew said. The 4-year-old favorited Cars and Monsters, Inc. The 6-year-old liked Monsters, Inc. The 8-year-old had Toy Story 3 and Wall-E. So I guess what really, because it's so scattered,
Yeah.
what that kind of tells me is Pixar really is appealing just as much to the kids as they are to the adults, and in all of their movies, So I don't know. I don't know what that says. I guess it's just
I don't
that
know
it's
either.
it's an interesting thing to think about. And the reason I was coming at this specifically for the Incredibles conversation is because I wondered if Incredibles weighed a little more heavily on the adult themes to the point where a kid would have a hard time getting any of the sections that weren't the action sections.
Yeah, and I feel listening to that, I hear a kid say, "Up is my favorite movie." I'm like, you don't get Up. You don't know what you're talking about. Or even Toy Story 3.
Yeah.
And I'm like, there's no way you understand what's happening in that movie.
Right. Or like with Wall-E, like, do you understand what that movie's saying
That's our
about
planet.
space?
You know that, right? Yeah. So there's definitely like a side of me that is like, well, I mean, it's a side of every Pixar movie, and it's what makes Pixar great, is that movie is thoroughly enjoyable as an adult in a completely different way.
Mhm.
You are watching two different movies, and if a kid's crying in a Pixar movie, it's because there's a scary part.
Yeah.
And I think that's the way it should be, that there's like, they're introducing these themes, so these kids have seen these things. These kids have seen, oh, his wife died. That's kind of sad, but the dog's funny. But then as they grow up, they might see a grandparent die, or they might see somebody else die, and they'll say like, "Oh, I've seen this before," and maybe they would probably need to rewatch it. I would need to rewatch it to see what the movie was saying about it. But it's almost, I think Pixar is helping kids grow up in a really safe way that as adults will watch and be like, "This is traumatic." If I were a kid seeing this, but as a kid, they don't do it in any way like Bambi's mom getting shot. They do it in a way that's very much like it's there and it is ingrained in the story, but it's also gentle.
That's a really good word for it, that it's ingrained in the story, because in so many of those Disney movies, which, we both grew up with those traumatic moments, you got Bambi, you've got Mufasa in Lion King. They were almost like plot devices.
Yeah.
They were traumatic. They were very heavy. They were actually, I'm not going to necessarily knock them, because I do think they were kind of formative for me, and I'm glad I saw them. I'm not saying that you shouldn't have those moments in kids' movies. I mean, obviously we're not saying that, because we're saying Pixar does it really well, but there's a difference to the way Pixar does it. And I think
definitely.
ingrained is a good word for it. It's more for character development than moving the story along a lot of times.
Absolutely. That's a great distinction to make. And so I think what kids are seeing in the movie is the fun characters, the jokes, sort of, the adventure of the story, and it's all there, and it's not dumbed down for the kids. But as they grow, they'll be able to pick up on other things. And the thing with the animation, it seems like they're constantly progressing it.
Yes.
Even if it's almost like you could look at every movie and say, "Ooh, that's what they were working on there. That's that's where their technology had progressed." With Nemo, it's like
the water,
depicting water and the murkiness of it, and
and
reflections and light and all that stuff through different filters like that. Monsters Inc. It's like, how can we do hair really well? And it came through in like Sully. And
well, and then even going back to The Incredibles, if we bring it back to topic, that to me was like, oh, they're going to actually try to tackle human beings.
Yes. Yeah.
And I remember seeing that in the trailer, and I'm like, this is when Pixar is going to go for it. They're actually going to go for trying to do a human being. And it was really good. But you see, even the advancements that they had made in the earlier movies were being built upon in The Incredibles. You saw those same reflections in like the mirrors and the glass that you saw in Finding Nemo. They don't just try it in one movie, say, okay, we did that, and then try something totally different.
Right.
They in a way they do, because they always sort of take the story into a completely new level, new direction, but they always build on what the animation technology they've built upon.
Yeah, Incredibles, it was the human action, it was the human hair, it was clothing, the texture of clothing and costumes. Like that was insane what they were doing. So just technically, Pixar kills it, and it's almost like kids can see good art. Like they recognize when it's done well. I mean, obviously you can't just take any kid to an art museum and they're like enthralled. It's like, oh, this is a really good painter. I don't even know what I'm looking at, but I can tell it's technically good. Pixar marries memorable images and enticing images with amazing technical skill. And that's what I love about them, is that they bring such artistry to everything they do, including the music. They use original composition. They don't just say like, walking on sunshine. We'll put that in there. Like,
I like to move it.
yeah.
Like that's gotta be in every
DreamWorks
animated.
is
Yeah.
like the anti-Pixar. Honestly, it's
And often you will
disgusting.
see that DreamWorks just has to copy the technology that they already paved the way of, like because DreamWorks has to keep up.
Yep.
They can't let it slide. So you do see some really nice animation, I guess, in DreamWorks, but it's all stuff that's been sort of played. And
But then you also have all their faces are so
Yeah.
they're 3-dimensional, but they're very flat planes.
Mhm.
The eyes are never in somebody's head. They're like just these flat, chunky, chunked out. It's just second rate.
But okay, the animation is one thing as far as just how they sort of bring the detail into what you see. But what I don't even know what you call it. What do you call in animated movies what you would normally call the way the camera moves? Like the setup of their
camera movement. I mean,
it is, but like there's not an actual camera moving.
no, but it's still.
But like the setup of the shots, I mean, like the action sequences in The Incredibles are right up there with some of the best stuff Marvel's putting out.
Yeah.
And not just the detail of what you're seeing as far as the way they did the hair or the costumes or whatever, but like the way that the screen is moving around and the characters are filling that screen.
The way it orients you and the way that
Yes.
you totally know where everybody is and that
Yes.
the action sequence has a point. Yeah. No, it's perfect like that. Like I remember that scene where Mr. Incredible is sneaking up to that building. In a simple pan, the camera never changes position other than panning
Mhm.
twice. You see the door he wants to go in and the henchman there, pans over to the door that he doesn't want to go in, another henchman. And then you see the idea form in his mind. He executes it. Camera pans back to the door he wants to go to, and it's clear. Like it's just very simple.
It's I mean, I guess that's where the direction comes in. Like it's a really well directed movie, and just little touches like that, that make you feel like you're actually watching a movie.
Yeah. And here's the thing about that. Brad Bird clearly showed that he knows how to move a camera, quote unquote.
Right.
I didn't love Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. Like I thought for a Mission Impossible sequel, it was actually really great and really exciting. I haven't heard great things about Tomorrowland. I know Brad Bird can do it.
You just haven't seen him do it outside of animation.
I want him to go back to animation though.
You wonder if there's something about animation.
Well, you can make it do whatever you want.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's go back to the letterboxd ratings for a second. Okay. So you're gonna keep this at a 4.5, which you didn't think you had, but you had. So, okay. So why don't you answer the question? Because I kind of alluded to it earlier. Like, where do you see this in the Pixar camp with The Incredibles? Do you still think it is your favorite? And if it's your favorite Pixar movie, that means that no Pixar movie is 5 stars.
No, it's not.
What does that mean?
My favorite Pixar movie. It's not. I think it's top 3 though.
Okay.
I think just off the top of my head, you didn't ask for this, but I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
It's WALL-E, Toy Story 3, Incredibles.
Okay. Good list. Yeah.
And the reason it's up there is sort of the opposite of what you didn't like about it. The way you said that there was no Pixar moment. To me, I hear that, and maybe unfairly, I hear you say that the movie didn't carry emotional weight.
No, well, yeah. I mean, if you're hearing me say it didn't make me cry, that's not really what I'm getting at.
Because it did make you cry?
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Did it?
No, it didn't.
Oh.
It didn't.
Dang
And maybe this is okay. Maybe this is possibly getting to the core of maybe what I sometimes have a problem with in superhero movies is I see areas where there should be more dramatic weight, and there just isn't. I'm thinking specifically of when he thinks his family's dead.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I have a solution for how Pixar could have done that better or Brad Bird could have done that better, and it's not bad. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying that, like, that is, I mean, how devastating can that be? Now, that same thing basically happens in Finding Nemo. Crushed me,
Yeah.
Like in the very beginning when he realizes, he loses his wife and loses little embryos of theirs, or
Right.
And it's not because they linger on it. They're able to pull that off with like a few seconds. It's not manipulative and with like music or anything like that. There's something about the way they stage that just lends a lot of weight in a very little amount of time, and you see that in a lot of the other Pixar movies.
Yeah.
So, I guess what I'm saying is, Incredibles had those moments where they seem to have made a choice not to do that for whatever reason, because they could have. Like, you know, there's just as much drama going on in this movie.
Yeah.
I see that a lot in superhero movies too, where you see these pretty tragic things happen, and it seems like they just kind of have to get to the action. You know? And I will say, I think Incredibles probably, after the rewatch, Incredibles might be my favorite superhero movie.
Yeah.
I mean, it'd be right up there with like The Dark Knight.
No, yeah, I agree. It's an amazing superhero movie. On top of the fact they pulled off the really difficult task of creating a new, convincing, and compelling superhero myth. That credit goes so much to Brad Bird creating that world.
And what's that
so
myth that
fully
you're,
realizing
like,
it?
Can you sort of explain
Just
what
the world they exist in?
Okay,
that you know.
Do you mean like focusing more on that sort of mundane side of the day-to-day life of a superhero? Is that kind of what you're talking about? Or?
No, I mean introducing superheroes, specific superheroes, and superhero teams and villains.
Oh, I see what you mean.
That we care about because
that never
so
existed
many,
before.
Right?
Yeah,
that never existed, and we immediately are down with it. You know, skips the origin story, just says you don't really need to know about that. Here's these superheroes that are in this world. What are their powers? Well, it doesn't really matter. They've got powers. It just goes with it. And but the world is so fully realized in Brad Bird's head that we're like, oh, okay, yeah, we're with you. Sure, yeah, there's superheroes and there's villains, and we know how that goes. Which is so funny that current superhero movies, one, rely on an audience familiarity already in the laziest ways, just saying like, you're going to watch it because you know them. But they also spend the first movie in the series on an origin story we've all heard before. And so like, why do they do these two things? I guess they're trying to bring in people who've never cared about that superhero before and still entertain the people who have been fans for a long time. But
well, I almost feel like they do that usually to appeal also to the people who were huge fans, to say, I wonder how they're going to do the origin story. You know,
just so you know, we know how it goes. Like, yeah, it's like it's like citing your sources.
Pretty much. Here's the footnote. If you need it. Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's what I think makes this an incredible. I was trying to avoid that word. Superhero movie. It's just that feat alone. Part of that is that great intro, the fake documentary.
No matter how many times you save the world, it always manages to get back in jeopardy again. I mean, sometimes I just want it to stay saved, you know, for a little bit. I feel like the maid. I just cleaned up this mess. Can we keep it clean for 10 minutes?
You get to that point. Wait,
Please?
don't get up yet. We're not finished.
Sometimes I think I just like the simple life, you know, relax a little and raise a family.
Settle down. Are you kidding? I'm at the top of my
that
game.
stuff's great. I love that.
Are incredible.
And I love the feeling it goes for. Why don't we just embrace the use of incredible? Because I was going to say the movie was not quite incredible.
Okay, well, we're not going to embrace that.
But in my...
But if I use it to say something good about the movie.
And I also don't want you to think that the sole reason I can't put this as like one of my favorite Pixars is because it doesn't have that like really sentimental, heartwarming, or tragic moment. That's actually, perhaps it could be a strength of the movie. It's just that I know the first time I saw it, that was definitely what threw me aback and what I was waiting for and never happened. And I also feel like it was probably an intentional decision because there's moments where it almost gets there and then it gets interrupted. Like you can kind of see Mr. Incredible coming to some sort of realization, and then it gets cut off because Violet says,
"Don't interrupt."
So caught up in the past that you are my greatest adventure, and I almost missed it. I swear, I'm going to get us out of this safely.
Well, I think Dad has made some excellent progress today, but I think it's time we wind down now.
It almost like winks at what you're talking about.
Pixar
because because they're all captured. They've all been captured. I actually wrote the note. The cliched moment of clarity for Mr. Incredible is undercut by Violet saving the day. I think that's great for a bunch of reasons. I think it's great to show like the shy teenage girl was the one who saved them all. I think it's great to show that the movie's message, which not one of the messages, which is you are not strong enough to do this alone. That's why you're not alone. Even though again later he tried to do it alone, and again Elastigirl had to say specifically, you are not alone. That's why you can't do it alone. Did you feel at all this time around that the emotional moment was kind of spread throughout the whole movie, that it was slowly built and released over the course of the movie more than in that one moment? And I understand that it doesn't have to be heavy-handed, and
Right.
I'm not saying that the movie would have suffered from having a moment, but I do feel like there is an emotional release. And for me, before I let you answer my question, I feel like I said earlier, that this movie gives so much attention to so many different characters, that there were a lot of people who had to realize a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
All 4 members of the family, Mirage, and
Yeah.
Syndrome all had things to realize.
Right.
And to make one moment for one character would have taken away from what the movie was doing for other characters.
Yeah, I think that's where I'm kind of in a weird position, because I'm not even saying it was a bad choice to not have that kind of Pixar moment. Because actually, if you are going to allow this to be part of that superhero genre, that probably would have taken away from it too much.
Yeah.
It would have sort of taken it into some direction that it never needed to go into. So I guess when it comes down to it, I'm maybe not even faulting the movie for it as much as I'm just saying, look, if you're going to compare it to my personal experiences with all the other Pixar movies I've seen, this movie just does not connect to me on the same level as those. We both would list WALL-E as our favorite Pixar movie.
Yeah.
And that movie, I rewatched it in preparation for this episode. It blows me away every single time, that movie. And in so many ways. And not just in one section either. I mean, probably in every single act. And I can't think of any other movie that has ever touched me with its ending credits as much as WALL-E does, you know?
Well, that
and
whole
says
movie
so much in its
actually-
ending credits. I mean, this is like...
That movie blows other movies away, not
Yes.
Pixar movies.
Absolutely,
That
yeah.
movie should be more highly regarded, and if it weren't animated, it would be.
Yes.
It would be like a landmark movie.
Yeah.
But it's animated.
I mean, this is like Animation's 2001, I think, in a lot of ways. Not to veer the conversation over
Whatever.
into WALL-E, but
I get you.
you know, it's just that what always sort of boggled my mind was that aside from them both being Pixar movies, that we would ever even like compare The Incredibles to something like WALL-E, and have people say like, "Oh, Incredibles is hands down their best movie they've ever done." I'm like, "What? No way!" You know, because even Brad Bird wise, I would personally probably choose Ratatouille
Really?
over over The Incredibles, just because I love the message of that movie. And what I think is interesting, which I was just thinking about before we started recording, so I don't know how well thought out this is, but I feel like he's got 2 opposing messages in The Incredibles and Ratatouille. Where in The Incredibles, there's a lot of messages in the movie, but one of them is this idea that some people are exceptional and that those people should never be held back in that exceptionalism. You see that mostly with Dash. You're shaking your head like you don't agree. Even all the dialogue between Dash and the family is basically them telling him to hold back.
Yeah.
And
No, yeah,
you know,
I'm just
and then the
thinking
movie
about it.
basically says like, you know, no, he needs to have his moments where he can really shine in his gifts and his talents. You know, that's in Ratatouille. But the part that Ratatouille that I love about that is the idea within that still having this mentality of anyone can cook.
But I don't see them as being in opposition. I see them being actually fairly closely linked. And they are both in gifts being suppressed based on other people.
What got me thinking about this was actually one of our listeners, Eric. He had written us about The Incredibles. He had a lot of great things to say about the movie.
did.
So I don't want to make him...
I was
I don't
glad
wanna-
he sent us a lot of stuff to think about before we
it was
rewatched
great.
it.
Yeah, I mean, Eric usually sends us some stuff to think about before movies, and I always appreciate it. It's
Yeah.
always great. But one of the things that he said, along with all these other great things he pointed out about how like it's the early James Bond music that's really well done, and He says, I'm not sure what to make of the exceptionalist themes. I'm a little tired of the emphasis on identity in movies like this. The story goes, if only you were doing the thing you were meant to do, you would be happy. If only you were able to be really true to yourself, then things would work out. I get a little frustrated with that message, but maybe that's because I'm not exceptional like our heroes. Which, don't sell yourself short, Eric. But I'm not sure, this is Eric again, I'm not sure where the movie lands with respect to these ideas either. The foot race at the end leaves me wondering.
Pick up the pace! Come on! No! Pull back! Pace it! Slow down just a little bit! Don't give up! Make it close! Second! Close second! Yeah! That's my boy!
I'm kind of with him on that, where I'm not saying, I think it's a muddled message, because it seemed like at the beginning it was this message of like, oh, that's terrible, this kid's got this great gift and everyone's squashing it. But I'm like, does that happen? Is that a problem? I almost feel the opposite always. Like, I always feel like we almost coddle our kids too much and almost try to sort of like really get them to like shine in every single gift we even think they might remotely have, you know?
I think it was a bit of an unfortunate choice for the message that I saw for them to choose superpowers. I mean, I love this movie, and I think it's very interesting, and the way they added superpowers to a family dynamic and that sort of thing. Which, by the way, they did more with it than just it's a family of superheroes.
There was a lot of character development in their superpower itself.
Yes, and the idea that a shy teenage girl feeling invisible,
and I like the fact that Dash's superpower gets him in trouble. Yeah, that it's almost like unwieldy.
Right. What I was picking up more this last time I watched it was more how the suppression of those gifts came from the parents' experience. The parents living vicariously in a way of saying, like, showing our powers got us in a lot of trouble, and we don't want you to experience the same stuff we felt, so don't use your superpowers. That happens a lot, usually in the opposite way. It's like, when I was a kid, I wish I played more sports. You're going to be in every sport. You're going to be the best pitcher. You're going to be the best center in the basketball team. Yeah. Like, it's pushing people. In either case, it's still the parents, trying to correct mistakes they felt that made in their lives. Avoid, I don't want you to feel bad in this way, so you have to do this thing. And the realization comes for the mother that, I know I told you not to use it, but it's who you are, and you need to use it now. Like, I should have been letting you do this all along, so that when you needed it, you could have had it. Like that scene where she needs her to put a force field around the plane, and she's like, I've never done that. You told me not to do that. Right. That's how it felt more to me. I like the movie less thinking about it the way you guys are thinking about it.
And I think that's just a natural way I interpreted it. And so I think you're probably more right in the assessment of what the intention was in the movie. And I guess maybe The Incredibles tends to focus more on this idea of someone who is exceptional is being told to hold back. Yeah. And that just never really... It didn't make sense to me. Like, I didn't see that actually being something that would resonate in the real life. And kind of like what Eric is saying, like, I never felt like I was held back in anything. If anything, I just felt like I wasn't good at anything. Good, and then Ratatouille, I feel like, was just something that hit me a little closer to home, because it was more of this message of... I mean, some people do have their talents and their gifts, and that they use
it also was a check on elitists.
That's what it was, really. Yeah.
And I totally resonated with that message too. But what this movie actually, as a teacher, made me think, like, ooh, I think I kind of do this, where the movie did so well depicting the heyday of superheroes and then the crush of the monotony that came later. And for the characters in the movie, the high of the heyday did not make the crush of the monotony worth it. So what they were saying basically to their kids was they were trying to save them from the crush of monotony, the crush of when your superpowers, your abilities, your potential doesn't pan out. I don't want you to feel the way I felt. So never reach those heights. Never go for those heights. Balance it out, because you know what? To be honest, not a lot of people make it as musicians, so don't be a music major. You should, really like go into business. You can always play music.
Right.
But don't. And I do this to my students. So I have this thing that I have to check myself on where I want to, like, for lack of a better word, like crush their dreams. Like, yeah, don't get excited about that. It sucks when you're an adult.
Yeah.
And so, like,
You do see that in this movie. It's a really important message.
In my mind,
yeah.
That's the movie for adults that is
Yeah.
coming through in The Incredibles. Is don't bring the baggage that they'll find into their lives too early.
Yeah.
And it's like, it reminds me of one of my favorite lines from one of my favorite movies, You Can Count on Me, where Mark Ruffalo keeps talking to his nephew and just talking about how crappy the town is and how everybody turns their backs on you and all this stuff. And his mom says he's going to find out the world sucks soon enough without you telling him about it.
It's a great movie.
And so that's what I saw happening in The Incredibles, is more like, hey, parents, let your kids be kids, let your kids explore gifts, whatever.
Yeah. I think in a way, you almost do yourself a favor when you go into The Incredibles as an adult to almost solely watch it as an adult, I think. You know what I mean? Like, if you're an adult, watch it as an adult and stop trying to think about what kids are going to think about this movie. Because the more I thought about what kids would think about this movie, the more I thought it seemed to sell itself short, or that it was muddled, or that, like, the kid ideas aren't as well fleshed out. But then if you ask kids, like, did you like that movie? Well, they did. So maybe I should just stop worrying about it.
Yeah.
Because if as an adult, I just allow myself to watch it as an adult, I find, and this happened with Inside Out too, I kind of realized this watching a lot of Pixar as I was watching a lot to prepare for this, that, like, I'm an adult. I should stop worrying and just have faith that Pixar will handle the kids part. I don't need to keep questioning whether Pixar can handle if the kids' message is getting through or not. Just relax and watch it as an adult and get the adult themes, because there's so much there.
That's what I'm saying when I say that Pixar is like a babysitter for a movie date.
Yeah.
Because the message is almost entirely for adults in every case. There are so many times where the Pixar movie is saying, hey, parents, don't do this to kids.
Oh, yeah.
Or, hey, parents, what emotion is in control of your brain?
Yeah.
Like, if we can talk about Inside Out for a second, for the dad, the main controlling emotion was anger, and the secondary emotion was fear.
Yeah.
For the mom, it was sadness, and I forget what her secondary emotion was.
Well, and that's said in like 10 seconds. You know what I mean? Like, it's not, it's a very quick thing. Yeah. That, again, is just sort of an example of, like, Pixar is making movies in so many ways for adults,
That's an interesting...
But not just movies, but the messages of the movies are adult messages.
Yeah. And that's an interesting thing that you say, that you need to watch it as an adult. I think that's true. I think I kind of want to watch every Pixar movie now as an adult,
and just stop thinking about.
Don't try to imagine how a kid's going to perceive this, because the kid's going to enjoy it,
right?
Because it's a funny movie.
It is.
There are parts. I wrote
Edna.
down,
We didn't even talk about Edna.
Edna is so freaking funny.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's Brad Bird.
I didn't know that until I had read up after watching
voice,
it. But that is such a great character.
This is a hobo suit, darling. You can't be seen in this. I won't allow it. 15 years ago, maybe, but now...
Oh, what do you mean? You designed it.
I never look back, darling. It distracts from the now. You need a new suit. That much is certain.
A new suit? Oh, where the heck am I going to get a new
You
suit?
can't! It's impossible! I'm far too busy, so ask me now before I again become sane.
Wait, you want to make me a suit?
You push too hard, darling, but I accept.
And what I love about that character, which I think was brought up by Tasha Robinson in her Dissolve article, which, can we just for a second...
Oh my gosh.
Can we just for a second...
We're in mourning today.
When we found out this morning that the Dissolve was ending, it just hit me like a ton of bricks.
I honestly thought, well, what's going to happen now?
What am I going to read?
What's going to... like Roger Ebert and now the Dissolve, where... I mean, of course, those people, Scott Tobias...
they'll go on
Noel
to do
Murray, Tasha Robinson, Genevieve Koski. They're going to write other places.
Yeah, man. Well,
anyway,
we just want to take a minute and
we love all the people at the Dissolve, and if they're looking for a podcast to come on to, we can't pay them, but we do love them, and they've formed a ton of our movie criticism.
Well, with so many of them even being in the AV club in the early, years ago.
Yeah, we've been following them for probably 10 years now.
Yeah, very formative. But going back to The Incredibles,
Sure.
Tasha Robinson wrote a really good write-up on The Incredibles when it was their movie of the week last year, I think. But she brought up Edna, and one thing that's so great about Edna is that she really is a lot of the comic relief, but
She speaks truth.
she speaks truth, and you can tell that she cares about this family, even though she's like this character that hasn't even been in their lives for like years,
Yes,
you know?
yeah.
And she doesn't have very long scenes, but the fact that you can get that in
Yeah.
such a short amount of time, and that this character is so quirkily funny.
Yeah.
So you get all the comedy and all of the sort of relational aspects that you need to have this fully fleshed out side
Right.
character, you know?
Yeah, without just being an exposition machine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, Edna's a very funny character. Oh, that was another thing in her house when she does like the identity confirmation or whatever to get into the room, and it's like Edna, and then the gun points at Mrs. Incredible, and she's like, "End guest," and like it's a joke from the environment. Like it's not just a joke. Like when Patton Oswalt talks about he's hired to punch up animation scripts sometimes, and it's just jokes yelled off screen. Like just add a joke here. We'll do something. It may not be funny, but yell a joke.
Right.
Like no, these jokes are part of what's happening in the scene too.
Right.
And it's great. Another thing that I found really funny this time that I remembered thinking was very funny is the babysitter character.
Oh yeah, with the retainer.
Yeah.
What'd you get? You don't have to worry about one single thing, Mrs. Farr. I've got this babysitting thing wired. I've taken courses and learned CPR, and I've got excellent marks and certificates I can produce on demand.
Corey.
I also brought Mozart to play while he sleeps to make him smarter, because leading experts say Mozart makes babies smarter.
Corey.
And the beauty part is the babies don't even have to listen because they're asleep. You know, I wish my parents played Mozart when I slept, because half the time I don't even know what the heck anyone's talking about.
Corey, I really don't feel comfortable with this. I'll pay you for your trouble, but I'd really rather call a service.
Oh, there's really no need, Mrs. Carr. I can totally handle anything this baby can dish out.
Can't I, little baby?
The way she talks, and part of it is in the way they've animated her face and the way she moves her mouth. But I was laughing so hard at her this time. Before we move on,
All right.
one of my favorite scenes for comedy is the "Where's my super suit" scene.
Oh yeah.
Perfect. Another time where they bring in that element that you've seen that argument in so many other movies, but the fact that he's like running around watching this robot terrorize the city.
Yeah.
He's like, "Where's my super suit?"
Yes, that's a great scene. And then it's Samuel L. Jackson too. So the delivery is just amazing.
Is underappreciated as the ridiculously talented actor that he is. He makes it look easy, so it's easy to overlook him, and he's in a lot of bad movies, so it's easy to overlook him.
Which I love his quote on that though. I remember when you did Snakes on the Plane, and they said like, "Why do you make so many like?" They didn't want to say bad movies, but that's what they were getting at. And he just goes, "Hey, not every movie can be on the waterfront, and I gotta work."
I love that, and that guy works a ton.
Yeah.
He's hardworking, and he never half-asses it.
Yeah. We should probably let's go ahead and start wrapping this up. But I think this conversation went in a lot of ways the way I thought it would go, which is we're not really arguing about whether The Incredibles is a good movie and whether we enjoyed it or not. I guess it still comes down to whether it had the same level of impact and meaning for me as it did for you. Yeah. And I think it might just have to come back down to the superhero thing for me. And I don't think I'll ever get to the bottom of why the superhero genre can entertain me aplenty, but elude me so much. Even in The Incredibles, as soon as all the characters sort of gather around the Metropolis Square, and they're going to have their final match, I just found myself involuntarily starting to tune out. So I'm going to put that on me. And I think it's just going to come down to I still can't quite put this in that same level of Pixar movie because it just doesn't connect to me in the same way as those movies do.
Okay. All right. I mean, I have nothing to say against that. That's just
I don't expect you to either. I mean, because what can you say?
Yeah, I still do love this movie. I think it's really great. I think this time around I saw some things. There was another message that I wondered if it was sending, and maybe this is just my own political bias coming through. But with Syndrome, who we didn't talk about at all.
Yeah, and actually that's weird that we didn't talk about him all because he's a
very important character.
Not only important, but as a villain, the way he becomes a villain is kind of pretty complex in a lot of ways, and also it gives you a lot to chew on.
It does, definitely.
Because the whole message is saying, yeah, you can't do this alone. And you almost have to wonder if he had accepted that message early on, if this whole thing could have been avoided.
Yeah.
But then again, you're also thinking, this guy's kind of just a weasel.
Yeah, was that kid actually going to be helpful?
He wasn't going to be helpful.
He maybe would have. He was developing pretty advanced technology.
Yeah.
But the message I got from Syndrome this time around was one of a weapons manufacturer, because his plan was to sell weapons to governments. That's how he was going to make his money. But he was not going to sell them the best weapons. So that he was going to sell them, he was going to arm every country, but so
he could save the day.
But then he created a need for himself by scaring them.
You're seeing a little military-industrial complex in there?
So by arming them to the teeth, he instills this fear in them, and he sets himself up as the only one who can save them with more military technology. Wow. I don't know if that was the point. I think
there's something to that.
There is something to that.
There's a lot to that.
Yeah, especially considering the way that Iron Giant has the military immediately seeing the Giant as a threat if it's Russian, but if it's on our side, then we want to use it.
Yeah, really good point.
Thank you. So bottom line, I saw some things this time, message-wise, that connected with me more than they had before. But it was a little less exciting, which is why I was going to say this doesn't count 5. It didn't deserve the 5-star rating I never gave it. So where are we? Are we? I think we're best buds.
Yeah.
On this movie, more or less.
Yeah, I don't think, because we didn't really disagree much on elements of the movie itself.
I think we're learning to argue a little bit better, because maybe in earlier episodes I would have really harped on that Pixar moment thing.
Yeah, I'm glad you didn't.
Yeah, I'm glad I didn't either. I would have listened back to it and been like, I should have gotten off that topic.
Yeah. Ryan's making fun of me because I cry in movies.
I cry in movies.
I know you do.
What a weird thing to... No, wait. I cry.
So we're best
buds.
Yeah.
We're best buds. We
I think
both
so.
like Incredibles. You don't love it. Or do you love it?
I think it's a really great movie.
You're not going to if your boys want to watch it, you're not going to be like... Oh.
No, I'll put it this way. It was not a chore for me to watch this movie.
That's good.
And I actually was happy to revisit it again, because it had been since the first time I saw it. So, and you're right. I did see a lot of things that this time around that I didn't notice maybe before. They just weren't the kind of things that, again, we're almost not comparing this to movies as a whole. We're just looking at Pixar movies almost, because everything that Pixar puts out, for the most part, is really in that upper echelon of great movies. Yeah. In fact, I was thinking about this. I was thinking, after Monsters, Inc. and Finding Nemo came out, that Pixar, you think about this for yourself. They're the only studio, as far as a movie studio, that I would ever even think to almost apply auteur status to. That I will try to see everything that Pixar puts out in the same way that I will see everything the Coen brothers put out.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Can you say that about any other movie studio?
No, definitely not.
Maybe Studio Ghibli, something about animation, I guess. I don't know, but we're talking about Pixar here, I guess, point. Is the point, is that Pixar really has reached that level in my mind
is already
of I will see everything they put out for the most part.
It's the Good Housekeeping seal of approval.
Exactly.
Almost.
Yeah. So for me to say The Incredibles is kind of middle of the road Pixar is not knocking it necessarily. So yeah, I think we can be best buds on this.
Okay.
So why don't we go ahead and let's talk a little bit about what we're going to do for our next episode of Can We Still Be Friends?
All right. Big old episode 29.
29. So in our next episode, what we're going to do is we're going to be getting a little topical here.
We're both a little nervous about this.
I'll be honest, we're pretty nervous about doing this, but we also feel like
we're curious.
We don't want to shy away from certain issues just because we're scared to talk about them. So
this was a listener suggestion a while back as well.
Yes. Here's the background: is we all know with the tragedy of Charleston, and now what we're seeing with a lot of the controversy about the Confederate flag, it's bringing up a lot of conversations about the South. it's even bringing up a lot of conversations about our interpretations of the Civil War and the South's role in the Civil War. So we thought it was timely to perhaps revisit a movie that is a quintessential classic of American movies, but does have a reputation for being a proponent of what might be called the lost cause of the South in the Civil War. This idea that the war wasn't so much about slavery, it was more about states' rights and also really romanticizing that antebellum South. So we're going to be discussing Gone with the Wind. It's been a couple years since I've seen it.
Me as well.
I saw it because I felt like I had to.
Yep.
And in a way, I'm really curious to revisit it now in light of all of the stuff that's happening. Can it still hold up as an American classic movie?
Yeah.
We're going to be kind of watching it and trying to have a discussion about that, being two white dudes that grew up in the North as Yankees.
Yep.
We're going to try. And
You at least grew up a NASCAR fan. So.
Oh my gosh. You're going to bring that to light here?
Well, I'm not going to bring it up next then. So, Gone with the Wind, it might be something you've seen, but probably need to re-see.
Yeah.
Or it might be something that you've always told people you've seen.
Right.
And you need to see it for the first time. Or you've just always said, I should probably watch Gone with the Wind.
Maybe
at some
someday
point.
I'll get that one. I really feel like I should see it. Well, we're giving you an opportunity
We're
right
giving
now.
you a reason. So watch it with us. Let us know what you think. You don't necessarily have to weigh in on your thoughts on the Confederate flag.
No.
But what do you remember about Gone with the Wind? Any feedback you want to give us, you can email us at feedback@canwestillbefriends.net. You can find us on Twitter. You can like us on Facebook, interact with us there.
Give us a call and leave us a voice message, 847-306-9532. And also, if you like what you hear, you like what we do, we always encourage you to, go into iTunes and maybe give us a little love, a higher rating and a little review if you don't mind. It always just helps to get the word out. So thanks for listening to this episode where we discuss The Incredibles, and we will hopefully catch you next time when we discuss Gone with the Wind. I like to move it, move it. I like to move it, move it. I like to move it, move it.